Okay, once again, uh, thank you for joining this workshop. Today we are going to work on multi-planned play. I'm going to explain how to combine different plans on different sides of the board and then how at the same time make the moves that can help you to initiate a plan on initiate multiple plans, not at the same time, but in different circumstances. Okay. First of all, a few words that I would like to tell you about the multi-planned play. This is a very important strategic approach which allows you to achieve a strategic advantage. So, for example, when the position looks like a fortress or it's a close position, you don't know what to do, then you have to ruin the enemy position slowly. You have to do some activity on one side of the board, then you see that you are stuck there, then you focus on the other side of the board and try to attack there. So and you may succeed if you have space and your opponent experience issues transferring his pieces from one side of the board to the other side of the board. Well, a very important component of the multi-planned play is creation of weaknesses. Now, and we can actually well, what multi-planned play can be. So first of all, it can be a two sides attack. I mean, two flanks attack. You do some attack on one side, then you switch to the other side. What else? When you combine the ideas of attacking a certain weakness with the plan of attacking the other weakness. For example, if your opponent has two weaknesses. Also, you can create a threat and combine it with the idea of, for example, passing the game to a favorable endgame. Also, you can combine several of ways of how to attack. So it can be pieces attack, it can be pawn attacks, well, or, for example, a multi-planned play can be very calm and it can be devoted to some space advantage. Well, it can be creation of weaknesses on different sides of the board that you can potentially later take advantage of. You can remaneuver your pieces to strategically more important parts of the board, or you can combine all these approaches. And as the result of this multi-planned play, you can initiate a tactical strike. What kind? For example, you can attack two weaknesses simultaneously. You can pass the game to a favorable endgame. Fine. Well, it looks like a French. I don't know which opening it was. I don't think it was French. I think the game started with d4 here. Actually, to be honest, I don't know. Yeah, well, if you want, I can check. No, actually, well, you can search for this game. It's Alexander Alekin playing against Oscar Chadges. It's not, well, it's a Dutch setup, but I think the game originally started with d4. d4, c4, then it was c5 played at a certain moment. The bishops were exchanged on a4, and the e pawn captured, g3 was played in order to protect, and the king got evacuated. No, it's definitely not French. But what we can see here is that white has more space, and white has a control over this file. Well, this file is also semi-open, but there is nothing to attack. This pawn is successfully protected. Well, what else? Invading the enemy camp on the queen side is a good plan too. And actually, by invading to the queen side, you can distract black pieces from the defense of the king side. What do you think? What we should start with in this position? What would you suggest? So definitely, this is where we have to play on both sides of the board. Here we have the open file, well, technically semi-open file, and here we potentially have a plan of invading the enemy camp. Okay, well, there are suggestions. Bishop h5 to stop knight g6. Interesting. Okay, John tells us that that was queen's gambit. Okay, thank you. Well, bishop b5 is premature. C takes, c6, bishop c8. No, it doesn't work. Bishop d3, fine. Knight d3, e5. Yes, looks good, but then they will chase our knight away with knight g6 or exchange it. So it doesn't favor so well. So that's why I first think that this is a move. Then we can strategically move the knight to d3. So yes, Snahin is absolutely correct. So bishop h5 to stop knight g6. Knight g6 was played anyway. Now knight d3, bishop e8. Well, definitely doing this and then bringing the knight to e5 is actually a good idea. But at the same time, there is no rush because it's hard to suggest a good move for black. That's why here they first decide to do some prophylaxis. King f8, king d2. So this king wants to protect the pawn on d4. As well as the king's position is prepared for the enemy potential invasion on the king side if it somehow happens. So rook b7, black just doesn't know what to do and is experimenting. Bishop f3, no rush. So the king tries to escape. Well, if the king escaped, probably there is no much sense to attack the king on the h-file, but invading the enemy position through the h-file is a good idea. So let's try to do it. First, it was rook h e1, and this is actually a vivid example of multi-planned play. White successfully targets this, as well as prepares some tactical strikes like bishop d5, or maybe knight takes d5 will be playable, or maybe something with the f5 pawn. Knight goes to f8 to defend there. Knight b4. Now bishop d5 becomes a threat, right? So c takes, knight takes, and this is a fork because the e pawn is pinned. That's why king goes back. King d3. So the king protects the d4, which means that now the queen can successfully go to the queen side, right? Well, rook g7 was played. I don't know what for, but I cannot suggest a better move because I just don't know what black should do in order to improve their position. Even if they somehow play something like that and exchange the bishops, first of all, there is no need to take on h5 and exchange these bishops. Second, even if that happens, the c6 becomes weak. Queen d2. So they are preparing to invade the enemy camp through a5. And black is forced to react, so rook a7. What do you think? How to play then? On the one hand, we are ready to invade the queen side with queen a5, but there is enemy rook stopping us. The enemy king went to the center where it's relatively safe. So what else should we do? How to play for win in this position, because it looks like a fortress. And I am sure that many of you faced with a similar situation when it seems that you have advantage, but you don't know what to do. You have to maneuver with your pieces somehow, but at the same time, you do not see the result of this maneuvering. Well, try to keep more patient and try to be more patient and improve your pieces and combine your threads. So, for example, in one of my courses, I was explaining that doing such a strategy like mosquito, doing a mosquito bite strategy, when you create several threads in a row, which are easy to parry, still makes a lot of sense because defending the position is harder than making attacking move. So if you pressure always, if you create threats, your opponent sooner or later will make a mistake and you will take advantage of it. So your opinion, which plan to focus on in this position? John thinks that he would play, he would double on the H file. Brian wants to prepare a break A pawn break. Which pawn break? So, because this doesn't seem logical, because you let enemy pieces to participate. Which other pawn break? Maybe f3, g4? Still, bishop g6 becomes problematic. Well, even if the king even is on a different position, what do we achieve with such a pawn break? I definitely understand why Brian suggests a pawn break, and this is a level of I would say even women grandmaster. For example, when I was I'm a bit of a fan of Sergei Makarachev, who has a YouTube channel. It's a Russian-speaking YouTube channel, so I watch it because Sergei Makarachev does a very detailed analysis of the modern games. He is a grandmaster. He was I think he was assisting Anatoly Karpov in some of his matches against Garry Kasparov. And Sergei Makarachev does a very good analysis. His wife is also a grandmaster, and she says that when she doesn't know what to do, she prefers to open the position. So, Brian, my congratulations. You are at least thinking at the level of 23, 22 and 50 rated player. Like Makaric's wife, her name is actually Marina. But no, if you want to be stronger than this level, you should decide whether opening the position favors you or not. Well, here I'm sure that before opening the position, white can white can take advantage of more benefits of the current position and prepare for opening the position better. Okay, take the d pawn, this pawn. Well, it should be well calculated. It doesn't seem that it works. Bishop a2 and move the king. Where move the king? Bishop a2, king here, and then f3. Well, makes some sense, but still bishop g4 allows him to activate pieces. And if, let's say, they play knight g6, then every time you play this, you'll get the f4 pawn potential weakness. No, then c pawn is hanging. Well, they will prepare it. Maybe they will defend it with the king. So we should assume that they also play. So, well, 20 to 50 player would try to open the position with a pawn break. At 25 or 26, like Sergei Makarachev was, will instead focus on how to improve the position and get better prepared for this opening, and actually whether this opening of the position is required or not. So here, rook h1 and doubling on the h file makes a lot of sense. Well, it doesn't win the game, obviously, but it allows us to get pieces coordinated. This, and this. So why did we play pieces with our pieces like that? Definitely doing g4 doesn't make much sense. But what are we going to do? We are playing against this weakness also, especially when we see that the king was evacuated, h7 became weaker. Doing bishop h5, taking there and trying to win this pawn or invading the enemy camp is definitely correct idea. But before doing it, let's just do some preparation. So they played king b7 in the game, king d2. Why so? Because the knight on b4 is not doing much. Let's get it back. Rook e7, knight e3. Knight d7 to stop knight e5. Fine. This is where we are ready to play this move. Once you take, you can then play rook h6, win the pawn on h7, or take the one on e6. How do they have to play? Well, if they take again, so you do this, and then rook h7 becomes a threat, so they probably need to continue with something like that. But something like that allows us, it allows us to play this move as well as knight e5. I would start with this, and then knight e5. So queen e8, I still don't see a way of how to play for a win in this position. Well, I mean, how to win. How to play for a win, I know. So maybe opening the position with g4 this time makes sense. But before doing it, can we find a way of how to invade the enemy camp? For example, what if we try something like that and add more pressure with our second rook? Then this will be really vulnerable. And the knight would have to stay there. Because if not, then it's completely winning. And only once we achieve it, we can consider doing this. Fine. So that wasn't played in the game. Instead, they played rook e8, trying to bring the rook back. Also, the rook is not doing much on a7 if black decides to locate his king on there. Trade queens to go to the endgame and maybe winning. Yes, but that was played later. So now it's time to capture on g6. So the bishop was passive on g6. That's right. And that was a bad bishop. So here, many of you may ask me, well, Victor, our bishop is definitely better than the other one on g6. Why do we trade? The answer is simple. We trade because it improves our position in a different way. It allows us to invade the enemy camp um, by making rook h7 or rook h8 move. So in this exact position, rook h7. So we trade a good bishop for a bad bishop to improve our position. If they take with a queen, then definitely we start with rook h6. So queen g8, let's say, to defend. And maybe knight e5 is a good move already. Because if the knights are exchanged, we can take with the queen and invade the enemy camp and threaten these e6 and queen d6 too. So h takes g6 was played. Rook h7. Well, if they exchange, they allow us to have the rook active, so that's why they played this move. Rook h1 to h5, threatening rook f5 with pin on the rooks. You are talking about this position. There is a queen right now. Maybe this. No, the queen goes to e8. No, well, I don't think we can take on f5. 95. Yeah, well, 95. Yeah, this is rook h7 first, rook a8, and 95. Why so? Because it's a winning position. If, let's say, they take with a knight, recapture with a pawn, the queen is trapped. Queen f8 is the only move. And then with queen e7, we provoke them to lose the game because, well, queen g8 protecting means they lose on e7. How this pawn can be protected? Rook g7 doesn't work. So they lose material. And then the game. Knight f8 because of that, to protect on g6. Rook h8 creates a kind of a pin. Rook g7. What would you suggest for white in this position? So it looks like black pieces are passive. They cannot improve their position. But what do we need to do in order to play for a win? Who can tell me? Rook h1, h6. So are you threatening to take on g6? I don't think so. No, you are not. Well, queen c3, king a6, they don't let you... Ah, you can take on c6. This is what you mean. Okay, maybe this is a good move. So the queen goes that way, and... Ah, and queen d8. Well, there is always g4. But g4 probably allows them to to take and activate their pieces. F4 is a weakness. Well, there is a better way. Well, queen c3, queen d8. So I don't think it's a good idea. Instead, you can play knight f3 because black has no ideas of how to improve their position. You can just regroup your pieces. The knight now is better there to attack a6. So rook a7 back, for example. By the way, why did they play rook b8 move? To keep the rook protected, as well as in future, when the game passes to the endgame, to play b4. So knight g5, rook a7. What would you suggest next? Rook g8 and then double, right? But knight d7 helps to unpin. Rook g8, if he unpins, you can play knight h7 move. But it doesn't work. Queen c3 now makes sense, I agree. But queen c3, probably they play rook a8. So, well, rook g8 is interesting. I like this idea. So knight d7, let's say, and then you have knight h7 move. Or yeah, knight h7 move. How does knight h7 work? So they move the queen. You take king takes, but then you have to go back. So then you can no, you cannot play this move. So again, not clear, not clear. Rook g8 is not a clear move. So queen e5, yeah, Brian is correct. So you play almost like Alexander Alekin. Queen e5, why so? Because now the queen exchange are forced, and the idea is that after we take with the f pawn, our king in the endgame can go to g5, and we simply win the pawn on g6. So by doing this exchange, we exchanged a defensive piece as well as we created a weakness and just a free pawn on g6. So we definitely can find a way of how to win it. And because they don't have a chance to invade our position on the other side without sacrifices, we are winning. Okay, so rook e8 was played in the game. Rook g8 this time. And well, it's technically completely losing position. That's why they use their only chance to play this move. And if this, it's a3. So pawn takes, the rook becomes active. I don't think they can play this move right away and leave the knight hanging, but I'm sure this is what they had in mind. So maybe they have to play something like that first. But I also don't see how it works. Maybe 90. Well, I don't know, actually. I'm sure it was possible to take on before. But it's better to play rook h to h8 to create a pin. Rook goes back to defend against the pin, but the knight is pinned. A takes before now. King a7. What do you think? How to play? Well, there are several options. Knight takes e6. Okay, fine. To win a pawn. Yeah, knight e6 wins a pawn. So, well, they have to react, otherwise we win a knight. So they probably, well, if they take with this, we take there and win exchange. If they take with a rook, we take there and we are 2 pawns up. So this should be a winning position anyway. But knight h7 works too. Yeah, knight takes and then we win exchange. There is not much they could do. But instead, white decides to deliver a checkmate. King c3, king a6, knight f7, knight d6, rook goes there, and then what? Who can tell me how to find the checkmate in this position? How to build this mating net? Rook g7, rook b7, and rook b6, but king a7. No, knights, no, you cannot bring them. Okay, yes, it's rook h1, after which this rook goes there and then captures on a4. Rook d7, rook a1, and there is nothing that could be done. Only they exchange sacrifice, which at the same time makes a passed pawn. So this is how the game ended. Again, this position doesn't look winning at all. It looks like white is better because of space, because of better pieces, but black has a very solid position. That's why you can defeat your opponent only by doing these multi-planned play, or you can just wait for a blunder. However, they may not blunder. So that's why doing such moves, which may have several ideas, at least two ideas in mind, which starts different plans, and combining queen side play with a king side play will work perfectly well here in such type of the positions. Okay, so here, what if king a7? They can try to escape. Well, yes, but they can try to escape, but rook a4, king goes there, this, well, checkmate will be delivered soon, right? Like that. Or maybe you want to do it earlier. Here, probably. I think this fails too. Yeah, it fails too. So what should I play? Well, if rook a4, there is king b8. And then I probably play this move. There is, well, there is also this move. Maybe I can start with b5 here. Oh, actually, there is an easier win. Yes, I can deliver a check with rook b7 in case of king b8. So blocking with a rook, let's say blocking with a rook, knight takes, rook h7, rook goes that way, and then it's b5 and c6. Or I also think it can be something like that. So rook moves there, then there. And after this move, it's this. Well, maybe the rook goes to this position. Still knight goes there, rook c7, but it seems like a disaster. So then you can still play b5. I think you can play this move. Rook goes that way. Knight c6 works well, but just b5. Takes, and then c6. And now rook d7 is coming. Well, yes, it wasn't a checkmate. It would be a win of a piece. Fine. Let's continue with our next example. The game between Rashid Najmedinov and Viktor Vasilyev. I don't know who Viktor Vasilyev was, but Rashid Najmedinov was known as a very strong combinative player. So white to move. White has a clear advantage. What should they do? They have some activity on the queen side. They can, well, maybe they can play on the king side as well. Their pieces are better. Look at this bishop. So black has a bishop pair, but the bishop on e7 is terrible. So what comes to your mind? B4. Yeah, doing b4 makes a lot of sense. I agree with you. And yes, you can start with this move. There is nothing wrong with b4. Now, Brian, please stop playing adventurous chess. So imagine you are playing against strong Soviet master. He'll definitely punish you for that play. You shouldn't expect that you are playing against 1300 rated player and that this is a blitz game. It's a serious game where you should make such moves that work even if your opponent plays properly. So bishop e2 and double on the a file makes sense, but I think once you do this, can they play knight b7 and exchange the rooks? So they stop your rook a2 activity. But doubling on the a file is a good idea. Here, Rashid Nijmedinov starts with h4 move. Well, because this helps white a lot. Then the knight can go to f5, h6 is a weakness. So, and not doing anything with this pawn. Well, actually, they can keep it where it is. So in the game, they played king g7. I don't think it's favorable for white to take there because there will be some activity through the h file for black. And we definitely don't want to allow this. But, well, if they take or if they push, well, especially if they push, it's knight h2. And after h5, we can play f3 and use our rook to attack enemy pieces. And after this, for example, I think knight takes, then the knight goes to h5, g5, h5 is a weakness too. Fine, so they played king g7. Why not to take on h4? Well, I don't think it makes any sense. What's the purpose? Because this is isolated. The knight can go to f5 sooner or later. Because you have only one bishop that stops knight from coming to f5. This bishop can be exchanged. So they played king g7. Oh, well, yes, you can play. Oh, you mean you threaten. Okay, okay. So let's go through this line. So take, queen g7. Well, the knight is hanging, so let me do this move. Bishop has to take. I don't think you can tolerate such a knight, and then I get the e4 square for my knight. So I don't think it favors you. Oh, well, I won't lose this pawn. And even if I sacrifice it with bishop c2, I have a strong attack. Fine. So king g7 was played b4. The move on the other side of the board, now this, and the knight isn't well placed. So rook a8, rook a8, and h5. And this is a very important move to fix weaknesses on that side of the board. Now, black is strictly required to play a certain move. Which move I'm talking about? Who can tell me? Is g4 possible? Yes, exactly. It's g4. Then suggest c5. Well, then I think c5 works only if d takes c6. If I ignore it and, for example, initiate the main plan that I'm going to illustrate, actually, let me illustrate it now. It's this. Then I can exchange the bishops, but I can also exchange the knights and then, for example, set my bishop there on f5, or I can do the other knight to e3 and to f5. So, and once I set the knight on f5 and there will be no pieces that can chase it away, black is strategically losing. So because of that move, they are forced to play g4. Otherwise, we would play knight h2 and knight g4 or bishop g4 and then knight g4. Because let's say, okay, let's say c5, well, h5, c5, c5, knight goes there, well, take, then what? Rook a2 maybe. Bishop goes there. So then what? If you decide to keep the bishop there, Well, I'm threatening it. So bishop e8, bishop f5, and your queen is trapped. Maybe you can get it evacuated, but look at this position. It looks so terrible. So rook c1, and now I invade your camp here. And sooner or later, I'll play this to expose your king's position. So that's why g4 was required. g4, knight h4, queen g5. Let's decide what white should continue with. What comes to your mind? f4 is attractive. Well, f4 is attractive if e takes, then g takes, and if the knight is not hanging, it works well. But I think they capture in passant, and then g3 is vulnerable. Rook e1, knight goes there, knight goes... Okay, rook, knight f1, knight e3, knight f5. Looks good, but slow. So what you should do instead, you can play knight f5 right away. Why so? Because by playing this move, well, you force your opponent to take. They cannot tolerate such a knight. The b5 becomes a weakness. Also, c7 is a weakness. g4 is a weakness. And your pawns are protected. Well, they can take on h5, but, okay. So they played rook a2, putting pressure there. But let's go back and let's say they take on h5 in this position. Well, queen b5, where does this guy go? I don't think it makes sense to defend it with such moves like this or that. So let's say knight d8. Then queen invades that camp. These and these are weaknesses. I mean, no, the bishop is not a weakness. It's just a bad bishop. But c7 is a weakness. So rook a2, adding pressure on the knight. Knight goes to b3. Knight goes to d8. Queen takes b5. Queen takes f5. Queen goes to c4, g4 is lost, but he takes there. But we take on c7. So now it's absolutely winning position. Well, despite material equality, white simply wins because white has a clear plan. Just push pass pawn and it's over. Plus, to this pass pawn, there is an attack on the enemy king. Queen g5, defending the bishop. What would you play? b5. Yeah, I think b5 is a good move, but there is a better one. Uh, yeah, what you shouldn't blunder is some sacrifice on g3, which would lead to a perpetual check. The only thing that you have to keep in mind. Well, they could move the bishop, but where? If they move the bishop there, then d6. If they move there, then the knight. So doing queen g5 seems to be most logical, but the queen there is overloaded. Bishop h4. Let me see how it works. So first of all, I can ignore it. No, I cannot. Well, no. Well, I like this move. So bishop g3, then I take there. The queens should be exchanged. This bishop is hanging, and the endgame seems to be winning. But let's talk a little about this move. G3 becomes a threat. I can try to stop it with queen g7. What's your opinion? So g3 this time fails because of queen g4. h5 stops it. I agree. Well, let's just take on g6. What do you think? Because if g3, I can take there and take on g3 with the queen. Well, maybe you can stop it with f6 move. Well, it seems very suspicious. Well, let's say I just take there. So g3, check, where the king goes. If h6, then another check. So here, another check, and I take on g3. If here, then check there. And then finally, I take on h5, exchanging the queens. I'm up a knight. So if the king goes somewhere else, I can still do the same strategy. This, king g7, and then I take on h5, this time without a check, but it's still enough to draw the to avoid a perpetual check. So this is a must, right? Because this is a check, we have to move the king. This is the only square. This move, but bishop f3 is enough. This is how we avoid all problems. The f2 can be taken, but I don't see any rush. Instead, I would maybe focus on the attack of the king or the d-pawn promotion. Okay, fine. Queen g5. The queen is overloaded, so it's possible to take there. Well, if they take, we take there. The knight is also lost. Bishop f6. Queen goes back to defend. Rook b2. So the queen is overloaded. Bishop retreats. h5 with h4 threat. But knight c1. And now e4 was played because doing h4 right now means we simply take with the queen. And they have a losing endgame. Because if anything else, it's queen g4 check. e4 was played. Queen takes e4. Bishop takes e3 at least. Knight d3 cements the position. What can be done? So rook d2. So here black weakened the king a lot, and they are also a pawn down. What do you think? How should we continue? What comes to your mind? Knight f4. Good move. I agree. Yeah, knight f4 looks really good. Well, knight f4, then you have to do this. Again, maybe it's not a big problem. So just this move. Taking there and threatening with knight h5. King g2, rook h1, but again, it seems a little slow, but it's still possible. Rook d1 was played in the game to offer a trade because with fewer pieces on the board, black has no chances. f5, queen c4, rook takes, bishop takes, and after this move, finally knight f4 was played. They lose this pawn, and it's over. Why do they lose this pawn? They played actually this and blundered the queen in the game, but maybe because black was low on time. So you know this is move 39, but you should know that uh, when this game was played, there was a 40 minutes time control, or 40 moves time control. It means that 2 hours were given to play 40 moves, and after 40 moves were played, some extra time was added. And I think that Viktor Vasilyev, playing black here, was already in a time travel, and that was a move 39, and he had to play it quickly. He just didn't see and played this. But let's say he would play a better move, which is h4. He still loses. Knight h5, king h6, knight takes f6. Taking there? No. It fails. So how does it fail? Well, you can just save the knight. Take, check, bishop e2. So queen f6, queen h4, game over. Two extra pawns. One goes to h5, the other one to b5, and they are both protected. Fine. So this is how the game ended. And look at the very beginning uh, of this game fragment analysis. What did happen? So white realized they're better. They're better. This bishop is bad. The knight is not doing much. So they have in mind the idea of b4, which turns the knight out of the game. They also have this idea, which is likely to provoke g4 sooner or later. And they focus on it. And then they try to get rid of this bishop to be able to make b5 a weakness. It happened. No, it happened earlier here. So b5 became a weakness. And then this knight becomes vulnerable. So playing on two sides of the board, where the black player had weaknesses, made a lot of sense. Okay, fine. We have two more games to analyze, so let's continue. But before we continue, let me share something with you. So what I'm going to share. So first of all, this Friday, I'm going to start a new course of group lessons, how to attack and defend in chess. This course will be devoted to attacking and defensive skills. So those of you who struggle with defense or who cannot always attack successfully should be definitely interested in it. So there will be 8 lessons, 1 lesson each week. These are live lessons. Each lesson is 1 hour and 30 minutes. Well, usually a little more because you have questions, because, because I always have something that I want to explain to you. 8 weeks, once a week, there will be homework. If last time I gave you only tactical puzzles, this time I'm actually going to provide you with a homework which will be devoted to the topic of what you studied. For example, if we studied like about preconditions of the attack, there will be a position where the task would be not to find a tactical strike and win the game, but play a certain move that improves the position that allows you to succeed with the attack and so on. So this is our plan. There will be 3-4 examples each time, similar to our workshops, and 4 more examples as a homework. This is what we are going to cover. 5 lessons will be devoted to attack, and 3 lessons will be devoted to defense. And it's actually really cheap. So it's $79 if you pay it with one amount, or it's $44 if you decide to divide it into 2 payments. So one in 1 month and one immediately, and the other one in 1 month. So for who is it recommended? Well, actually for everyone. But I'm mainly interested in chess players between 12 and 1500. Because I'm going to provide material related to this level. If you are 11, it shouldn't be 100. It shouldn't be a problem. If you are 16 and 17, it's still okay. You can still join and take a lot of benefits from this course. And we start on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. I think it's +5 in Central Europe. So it's 10 p.m. in Europe. which is too late, but still accessible, especially for the UK residents, because they are +4 to Eastern Daylight Time. So how to enroll? Easily, either this or this option. You click enroll. For this, you can pay by your credit card or any banking card or by PayPal. And then you'll get the link and the confirmation of your purchase, as well as a receipt. Fine. Let me share the link, actually. So the link is here. The second thing is that if you would like to support my workshops, there is a button that allows you to donate with PayPal. I would appreciate it a lot. So the money automatically, oh, so I will receive money if for this course I'm doing like collaboration with the chess world. For if you click on this button, the money will be redirected to my account. So here you enter the amount that you want to donate. It can be any amount. Then you click the PayPal button. It redirects you to enter your PayPal account, and then you send money by PayPal directly to my account. So you see, it's in Spanish because I'm residing in Argentina for now. Well, for almost 2 years. Fine. Let's continue with our main topic and with our examples. If you have any questions regarding this course or regarding anything else, you can always message me. You can always message me to at tricksofchess@gmail.com. Tricksofchess@gmail.com. Fine. Let's continue and take a look at this position taken from the Karpov's game against Anzikar. Soviet Union was playing against Germany. Okay. So what do you think? Bishop h6. Well, at first I also considered this option. Mhm. How does bishop h6 work? So bishop h6, what happens then? Uh-huh. They take, queen takes, rook takes there, and with rook a8, bishop b1, queen f8, they offer an exchange of the queens. So doesn't look so attractive. That's why actually bishop a7. And as you said, it's paralyzing the black's position. So, well, white definitely has advantage here. They have the center. They have some perspective on the king side, and they should launch a kingside attack. Their knights are ready to jump there, and the queen. The knight and the queen. Black has only one counterplay through the A file. In order to neutralize it, we can play bishop a7, and that's it. It's technically a winning position. It's technically a winning position. So yes, you can play a4 here to bring, well, I like to prepare a4, yes. But the key idea is that now the queen can go directly there. Also, we can use our knight. So the game continued with knight e8. Bishop c2, this, and the rooks are doubled. Why so? Because now they cannot take the knight, the bishop on a7. For example, they could try maybe queen c7, knight d8, and put pressure. If it's doubled, then what? We protect the knight and paralyze their activity on the queen side. We couldn't really take advantage of this rook. Rook lift here doesn't seem like a great plan. We should attack with queen, two knights, and maybe with our pawns by doing f4 or by preparing, or maybe h4, h5. Well, what I don't like about h4 is that they can block with h5, and then it's a bit unclear. We provide our opponent with a square on g4 where he can set his bishop successfully and maybe ruin our plans. Fine. So queen e7. This is what was played. Bishop b1. There is no rush. So protect there. Also, we are ready to play this move in case if there will be an attack. Bishop e8. Now, how to continue? What do you think? So definitely let's focus on the kingside play. What do you think? Yeah, exactly. So push the h pawn, then it's h5. Now let's instead move these knights away. One goes to e2, the other one goes to h2, and we are ready for f4. So they are trying to prepare for f4, and actually capturing there was better than what they did. For example, knight takes f4, bishop f5, knight goes back, bishop g7, then knight f3, and well, at least they can hold the position for a while. However, here, in addition to the kingside attack, we have a bishop move, which allows us to take the control over the A file and invade the enemy camp once we, for example, stuck with the kingside activity. But here they played this. What do you think? How should we react on this move? It's a very specific move, which, well, no, this is not, it's not a bad move itself, but this move, or not taking immediate actions, allows white to play what? It allows white to play f5 and block these pieces. Well, on the one hand, we close the position, however we originally wanted, but we still have a room to undermine the h and g pawns. g5, and let's prepare our pieces. So this time, because the enemy pieces are paralyzed, we don't play g4, we don't play knight g4, not yet. We use the h5 square. So bishop c2, bishop f7. We should occupy h5 and g4 with our knights, and then undermine. Knight g3, bishop d1. So now we are ready to invade. They played this move. I don't know what for. Probably they were running out of moves. So bishop h5. If they take, we can successfully bring our knight there. So let's say this, not to take the bishop. So many of you may want to take this bishop, but what for? It's a bad bishop. You can only take it if, for example, then you win one of these pawns. Undermining means attack with a pawn. So, for example, let's say in this position, let me just make a few moves to illustrate it. So let's say here, h4 is undermining. We are trying to get rid of this pawn. We are provoking the pawn to take. They can support, of course, but what I mean when I say undermining is this. When you attack something with your pawn, it can be an enemy pawn or it can be an enemy piece. So Those of you who joined the workshop, we are doing a workshop actually. We are talking about a multi-planned play, mainly of how you should combine different ideas on both sides of the board and how to take advantage of it. Fine. So h6 was played, bishop h5, queen e8. We defend. They play with the knight. What should we do then? Who can tell me? So many of you here, like Marina Makarichova, would probably suggest queen g4, h4, trying to undermine. That makes sense, definitely. But what else you can do? Bishop a3. Yeah, Brian, why not? But do not rush. Well, look at the position and tell me if you see any helpful move for black in this position. Does black have any helpful moves? Well, it doesn't seem so, right? Knight g4 is sneaky, I agree. So you can play so, but they can ignore knight g4. And if you see that your opponent doesn't have any moves that improve his position, let's improve our position. So king h1 to not fall under the attack on the g file. Well, I don't think that the g file will be open. Instead, rook a3, rook a2. So this repositioning, c3 is protected. Also, queen going to a1 is a possibility. And then moving the bishop, for example. So king goes back to g8. Knight g4, your tricky move. Knight goes that way, but looks like we cannot progress there with the knight being there because now h5 is hanging. I just want to show you how. So when the king was on g8, there was knight f6 check. But when the king is on f8, there is no, so which means that your bishop is hanging and you cannot play a random move. It's just a blunder. You have to do something with this bishop, either take or move the knight back and protect. King g8. Bishop takes. They took with a knight. However, what if they take with a queen? How would you continue then? The queen is on the 7th rank. The knight is not doing much. Well, at least it stops your queen from invasion. But what do you think you should do? Queen g4 and h4. Well, John, you didn't fully understand the concept of multi-planned play. So queen g4, h4 improves your position a little. How can you get the knight to e6, Brian? I don't think it's possible. Queen e1 makes more sense. I agree. Wait, bishop b6. This move can be already played. You are threatening to take and invade the enemy camp because there is a pin. Two knights are pinned. Oh, let me just illustrate it. Take. If this move, you invade, and then your opponent is in the trouble. So at the very least, you can continue with queen. Well, what is better, queen h5 or knight h5? Well, this is hanging too. Yeah, you can continue with this move. Let them take. Okay, fine. Let's not give up material. Let's take there. They take, and then this move. Oh, no, it doesn't work as I wanted. Okay, fine. So, well, bishop a5 then. Bishop a5, knight h5, bishop moves, and then I can invade the other side. Fine. And if the rook takes, knight takes, it's just a knight loss. So bishop b6 is a threat. That's why they took with a knight to not hang the knight on d8 anymore, and allowed us to invade the enemy camp with queen h8. Knight goes back, and what would you play? Yeah, it's time for queen g6. Why so? Because it allows you to create a mating threat, as well as something like that. And that's why a queen trade is required. Well, bishop b6 maybe is not bad, but queen g6 is a direct way to play for win. So now the queens should be exchanged. Then the knight goes there. This is hanging. The other knight goes there. This becomes hanging. And there is bishop b6 at the very end. The game continued with this move. And after knight h5, Black simply resigned. Why? How do they stop this queen g7? Well, queen d7 or queen e7. Well, let's choose this move. And then knight g4. They lose there or there. It's game over. So they can take on g6, right? But after that, the knight invades here. d6 falls. g7 is also attacked. So it's absolutely losing with no chances. That's why after knight h5, he simply resigned. Look at this original position again. So white should play on the king side. He understands it. And in order to perform his task on the king side, he plays a move on the queen side and combines the ideas of paralyzing his opponent on the queen side with the king side play. And later, he prepares to invade the enemy camp through the A file. So by doing this, he's always ready to play one of these moves to be able to exchange rooks and invade the enemy camp. Fine. Okay, we have our last example, the game between Gary Kasparov and Gert Leitering. This is where I want to show the full game. So it was Queen's Indian with b6, g3. He chooses a Catalan setup to parry it. Bishop b7, bishop g2. Well, knight e4 is so common here. He plays bishop d2 to take there. And he doesn't really value this bishop because the knight in the center is well placed. And for example, here you may say why they don't take. Because now these bishops will be exchanged, which white tries to avoid when he plays fiancetta in queen's gambit positions. So he just defends there because very often this exchange favors black. Another possible move in this position is queen c2. Well, you also may ask me why not something like that to create a pin? Well, because there is a discovered attack. They attack your queen, so you don't have time to take on b7. You first have to take there, and then the bishop's, well, your bishop is either lost, or in case if there was already castling played, then it's just a trade, which again doesn't favor white. So that's why bishop d2. And if knight d2, Gary is completely fine. Then he can probably play e4. Bishop f6, castle, castle, rook c1. He is trying to play helpful moves. Yeah, queen c2 is one of the moves. c5, undermining the center. What would you play in this position? So the question is rook b1. What's the purpose of rook b1? The rook on the c file at least participates. The rook on the b file is not doing much. There is a question particularly to Peter. How would you play in this position for white? Yeah, exactly. It's d5. So d5 blocks the bishop and is not a pawn blunder. For example, take. If they take there, bishop takes, and the d5 is protected. Well, they took there. Then doesn't matter. You can take with a queen, you can take with a knight. Gary took with a knight. Now d5 is still protected. d6. So white has a better pieces coordination and must decide on which side of the board to play. This queen side is undeveloped. Well, playing on the king side makes sense too. But first, there is something that you should do. Okay, what do you think? How to play? The center is stable. Good point. So we can attack the king. So having a stable center is one of the preconditions to initiate the attack on the enemy king. This is what you are going to learn this Friday if you participate in this course of group classes. E4. Well, e4 maybe, but then e4, f4, e5. This can be the plan. You can also play this move, knight c4, similar to Benoni setup. I actually like this plan. But by playing e4, you do not let your knights to use such a square. Wait, how can I participate in the Friday's class? Well, I think I send you the link. So this, let me send it once again. So click on this link and enroll. And then you'll get the link to the to our meetings on Friday. So each Friday at 5 p.m. we will do the class, and well, usually there are about 6 participants. So if you want to ask something, you will be allowed. You can unmute your microphone there. If you have any specific questions that you would like to be covered, you can also message me, and I always listen to my students' needs and try to help them to decide certain problems if they have. So actually, well, okay, I'll go into repeat it later. So what do you think? If we do e4, we do not let our knights to go to e4. That's why, well, this is definitely a possible plan. However, you have to consider what happens if bishop goes to d4, so and so on. Also, your position of the knight is not stable on c4 because they can chase away. So if to start, I would suggest starting with this move and then doing that, and only then doing this. But Gary plays knight de4. What does he want with this move? Does he want to exchange? Bringing attacking pieces closer to the enemy king. Well, kind of. Just adding pressure. Then what? Rook e8 was played. Queen d2. a6. So he's preparing for b5. What would you play here? I'm sure you won't guess Gary's move here. Queen f4 fails because of bishop f5, I think. Well, it allows you to bring the queen to g4, which is not bad, but you don't really get much advantage after that queen's transfer. So before doing his kingside activity, he plays, well, not a4, but b4. Why so? He wants to do this and make the bishop vulnerable. and have a chance to invade the enemy camp through the B file in case if his kingside attack stacks. What happens if they take? Well, I'm sure you see that they cannot save this pawn, right? So how do you have to play them? Isn't this isolated pawn? Or mean the A is isolated pawn? Yeah, yes, the A pawn is isolated pawn, but what does it mean? If you if every time that you create a isolated pawn, you should prevent doing some active actions, then you shouldn't play chess. So the A pawn becomes isolated, but this is a closed file, so they can hardly attack it. So it's not such a big problem. Instead, it's knight f6. Yes, knight f6. And if queen f6, it's knight f4 with queen capturing there. So if g takes f6, then yes, you can save this pawn, but look at your position. So a5, let's say, I don't know, queen h6. Queen h6, let's say rook e2, knight e3. Oops. Knight e3, let's say. How should I play in this position? Queen f8. No, queen f8, queen f6 is a problem. And this is my next move. Or yeah, or this is my next move. Actually, I can start already with this. Fine. So yeah, that's the move. Bishop e7. Now b takes c5. D takes c5 means d6 directly. And this leads to serious problems. That's why b takes c6. And now Gary does queen f4. But first, he opens the position there to be able to either attack the bishop or invade the enemy camp through the b6 square. Queen c7. I'm not sure what for. Knight a4. So these two pieces are pressuring d6 as well as are going to create some threats to the enemy king's position. Well, doing something like that is a blunder, right? How would you respond? Well, this is interesting, right? But it's not the only way. Well, yeah, there is this move. That's right. And after what? So the d pawn is pinned. If the queen takes, there are two knights, so probably queen b7. But then I think you can just take on d5 and then play knight f6. Maybe bishop c6 is a better move. Then you can add pressure. Why not? Threatening to take twice, and only then play knight f6. Okay, fine. So queen a5 to avoid these problems on the c file. Now the d pawn is no longer pinned, and this is hanging. Well, is this knight hanging actually? What do you think? Yeah, it's not, because there is a discovered attack. So that's why we can ignore this knight for a while, but have it in mind. So this move, attacking the bishop. Bishop takes on d5. What else? Well, of course, he can play something like that. But then you at least can play this move. And after rook a7, play that move. Well, this is one option, right? The other option is just to take on d6 directly. So this is hanging, going to do this. For example, knight d7, knight c8. Or maybe there is a better move. Doesn't matter, but the white's position is totally fault. Knight c5 with attack of the b8. Yes, works too. Okay, so bishop d5 was played. Knight b6 fork. They take on e4 to avoid material losses, but bishop takes e4, and now rook a7 is a must. So, how to play? Yeah, bishop d5 looks good. I agree with you, but there is a better move. Bishop d5, they play rook f8. Sneaking is almost correct. You're on the right way, but you're almost correct. Knight c8 first. That's right. That's right. So knight c8, how does it work? Well, if they take, it's queen f5, threatening mate and threatening the rook. That's why it's a poisoned knight, but this is a fork, and where do they play? So if they play this move, we can just capture on b8. That's why they play knight c6. Knight takes a7, knight takes a7, and that's the end. They have to defend like that. Then the rook can wait. And well, it's not, they do not lose more pieces, but it's absolutely a winning position. Just look at white pieces and look at black pieces. So having something, doing something like that guarantees a win. The queen is not really doing much. So again, look at this move at this position. So many of you would consider doing queen e4 and some kingside activity, which is generally well. But before starting doing actions on that side of the board, you need something else for success. Here, in order to succeed, you at least need to open the B file to be able to either attack through the B file, having in mind that the enemy pieces are not developed there, or you can invade the enemy camp through the B file. This is how it works. How did you like our examples today? We are about to finish our workshop. So what I want you to remember is that you should choose such moves that are likely to lead to several plans. I mean, that at least have two ideas behind. So, well, and it's always good when you have a chance to change your mind, and instead of doing a certain plan that you originally wanted, the second plan that you could have in mind and the move that you played before was helpful to initiate the second plan as well. The difference between opening, middle game, and the end game. Well, I would say the end game is the position without queens. Many chess players won't agree with me and instead say that the position is considered to be the end game if there are no queens and the king's position and the position of both kings is safe. Well, middle game is when the opening stage of the game is over. So, and opening finishes when you forget theory. So if, for example, if you don't know how to play after the fourth move, you should consider that it's already middle game. But usually middle game is such situations when most of your pieces are developed. out of their initial positions. So developing and moving the pieces out of their initial positions are actually different things. Because when you develop pieces, you're trying to make them helpful in the game, not just you're moving them away from their initial positions. This is not considered to be a development. Am I going to do a workshop on the end game? Yes, I'm sure I will. Not sure when. Not next time, but I'll think about it. It's definitely one of my plans, and there were some in-game technique um, workshops. And I think that the next group course will be about endgame technique too. So this one is about attack and defense. The second one will be about the endgame technique. Okay, fine. So I would love to see everyone in this course of group lessons. So it's actually very cheap. So there will be 8 lessons and you pay less than $10 for the lesson. And the lesson is not just 1 hour, it's 1 hour and a half. So it's very, very cheap. I'm sure everyone, or almost everyone, can afford it. Well, my recommendation is to participate there. There will be no streaming, so no, well, there will be recordings. And if a member of the group, for some reason, missed the class, he'll get the recording and the homework, of course. All sessions are live. So similar to how we are meeting today, there will be a Zoom meeting, no other streams, but the Zoom meeting will be recorded. Fine. Again, so this is the link for you. And if you want to support my work, that's great. This is what I would appreciate. So this is the second link to donate if you want. There is also a question, what move I would suggest for intermediate chess players? Well, there is a book which is called Gary Kasparov Teaches Chess. You can try it, but this is not the best one, but I really like it. To improve tactics and combinations, I would suggest doing my course on Chessable. Train your tactical vision. Let me show you. I would suggest this. Let me send you the link. Also, there is a book which is called 1200 Combinations by Maxim Bloch. This is the one I would recommend. It helped me when I was much younger. When I was a kid. Okay, fine. If there are no questions, let's finish for today. So we are done, and hope to see you next Sunday at the next workshop at this time. If you can invite your friends, that would be great. I would really appreciate it. Oh, wait, my camera isn't working. Now it is. Fine. Thank you, and bye-bye.